I first noticed her because she never rushed. In a place where everyone else seemed to be on their phone, skimming screens while waiting for coffee, she just waited. Hands folded loosely around a thermos she'd brought from home, eyes moving across the room without really landing anywhere. I'd seen her before. Same coffee shop, a couple of blocks from my apartment. I usually came in after my morning class, half awake, still carrying the heaviness of notes I'd never reread. She came around the same time too, but not every day. Just often enough that I started to expect her. That morning, I sat 2 tables over, pretending to review a draft on my laptop. Really, I was just glancing up more than I typed. She wore a simple navy sweater, sleeves pushed back, the kind of clothing you didn't notice unless you wanted to. She had a paperback balanced in one hand, the kind with a cracked spine, but her eyes weren't moving across the page. She was somewhere else. The barista called my name. I stood, nearly bumping into her as she was setting her thermos down on the counter to ask for hot water. "Sorry," I said quickly. She gave the smallest smile, the kind you could miss if you weren't looking. "You're fine." Her voice was soft, even, like it carried the weight of not needing to fill space. I should have just gone back to my seat, but the way her hand rested against the counter caught me, steady, but with the faintest tap of her thumb against the lid of her thermos. Nervous? Restless? I couldn't tell. When I sat back down, my laptop screen glared blank white at me. I typed something pointless, deleted it. Across the room, she got her hot water, slipped a tea bag from her pocket like she'd done this 100 times. No fuss. No rush. She didn't look lonely exactly. But there was a pause to her that I recognized. The kind of pause I carried myself, messages typed late at night then backspaced, friends' names scrolled past without clicking. Not loneliness with a capital L. Just a smaller, quieter kind. I don't know what made me do it, but when I got up to leave, I stopped near her table. "Do you always bring your own tea?" She looked up, surprised, not annoyed, just measuring me. A half beat passed. "It tastes better," she said finally, with the faintest shrug. "And I know what I'm getting." I nodded, shifting the cup in my hands. "Makes sense." She tilted her head, like she was about to go back to her book, then asked, "You're usually here after class?" The fact that she noticed startled me. My throat caught before I could answer. "Yeah. Tuesdays and Thursdays. Guess I'm predictable." Her lips pressed together, not quite a smile, but not nothing either. "Nothing wrong with that." I left before the silence stretched too long. On the way out, I folded my receipt into a thin strip, twisting it between my fingers until it nearly tore. Back in my apartment, the air felt heavier. I put the coffee on the counter, unopened, and pulled out my phone. Scrolled to an unsent draft I typed to a friend weeks ago. You ever notice someone just enough that it feels like noticing too much? I stared at it, thumb hovering, then locked the screen. A buzz lit it up again almost instantly. Unknown number. Just 2 words, "Thanks, neighbor." I froze. Then scrolled back through. My number wasn't listed anywhere. I'd never given it to her. Which meant she had noticed me more than I realized. The message kept circling in my head, "Thanks, neighbor." I hadn't answered. I wasn't sure how. The next time I saw her wasn't at the coffee shop. It was in the narrow stairwell of our building. I was balancing a laundry basket against my hip when she came down the steps, thermos in hand. We both hesitated at the same landing, too close, like one of us should have moved first. "Hi," she said, her voice almost casual. But her eyes flicked down to my basket and back up again. "You live on 2?" I nodded. "Yeah. You?" 4. "Been here a while." She gave a small laugh. "Long enough to see neighbors come and go." I adjusted my grip on the basket, though it wasn't slipping. "Guess I'm one of the new ones." She didn't answer right away. just leaned against the railing, sipping from her thermos. The steam curled between us. I caught the faint scent of chamomile. Do you ever miss it? She asked suddenly. Miss what? Being new. When everything still feels temporary. Like you could leave tomorrow and no one would notice. I thought about it longer than I should have. Sometimes. But it's lonely too. She looked at me then, really looked, and I had the strange sense she wasn't asking about me at all. We walked the rest of the stairs in silence, her steps measured, mine a little too quick. At the laundry room door, I pushed it open and held it without thinking. She brushed past me, the sleeve of her sweater grazing my arm. Inside, the hum of machines filled the space. She sat on the edge of the folding table, thermos beside her. You don't mind if I— No, it's fine, I said quickly, loading clothes. We stayed like that, side by side in the quiet. I felt her presence more than I saw her. After a while she spoke. My son used to do laundry here. Years ago. Before he moved out. She pressed her lips together, almost like she regretted saying it. I tried to sound casual. He doesn't live here anymore? Married. Different city. A pause. It's good. That's what's supposed to happen. I nodded, folding a towel that didn't need folding yet. My chest tightened with the thought I didn't want. If she had a son my age, what did that make this? I told myself not to read into it, not to notice the way she leaned forward slightly, like she wasn't ready to go yet. But the silence between us stretched again, too alive to ignore. Finally I said, I don't know why that moment stayed with me, when you asked about my classes the other day. Maybe because it felt like someone finally saw me. She didn't move for a long second. Then, slowly, she reached over and tapped the lid of my detergent bottle with her fingertip. A light, almost meaningless gesture. But her eyes held mine, steady, like she'd heard everything I hadn't said out loud. And then she smiled, quiet, fleeting, gone before I could fully catch it. It started happening more often, her timing, my timing. Not planned, not arranged, just overlapping. The stairwell. The corner shop. The coffee line. Like the universe had put us on the same slow circuit. One evening, I was carrying groceries when I saw her at the building entrance, fishing in her bag for keys. A folded umbrella stuck out of the top, half open, as if she'd given up on it earlier in the rain. She glanced up when I came closer, strands of damp hair framing her face. You look soaked, she said. You too. I shifted the bag on my arm. Want me to? But the sentence broke off. Offer her what? My umbrella? A towel? Too much, too forward. She held out her hand instead. Give me one of those. I passed her a grocery bag, lighter than it looked. She carried it up the steps beside me, and for a few seconds, our strides matched too neatly. When she reached her door, she handed it back, but she didn't unlock right away. You're kind, she said simply. And then quieter. Maybe too kind. I didn't know what to do with that. My throat tightened, words catching somewhere between thank you and what do you mean? The silence stretched until footsteps echoed down the hallway. A neighbor. Middle-aged man, arms full of takeout boxes. He nodded at her, at me, then disappeared into his apartment. The moment collapsed. She turned the key, gave me a soft smile that didn't reach her eyes. Good night. I stood there longer than I should have, groceries biting into my palms. The next afternoon, I saw her at the laundromat again. She was sitting on the folding table, reading glasses perched low on her nose, a half-crossword in her lap. The hum of machines filled the room. I leaned against the dryer beside hers. You didn't finish your tea today. She glanced up, amused. You noticed that? Hard not to, I said, and immediately regretted how it sounded, like I'd been watching too closely. Her eyes softened. You notice a lot. I wanted to tell her I couldn't help it. that I'd started scanning every room I walked into, just to see if she might be there. But the words tangled. Instead, I said, "Do you ever?" and stopped. "Do I ever what?" "Never mind." My hands twisted the hem of my shirt. She tilted her head, waiting. Then, very carefully, she set the crossword aside and leaned just slightly toward me. Close enough that I could see the faint lines at the corners of her eyes, the dampness of her lower lip where she'd just bitten it. For a second, I thought, no, I felt, she might close the gap. That she might let me. But then her phone buzzed against the table, shattering it. A name flashed across the screen, one I didn't recognize. She pulled back quickly, almost too quickly, pressing the phone to silence it. Her hand stilled on her lap. "I should go." And just like that, the air shifted. I stood there, heart hammering, words useless. We had almost crossed into something else. Almost. It was late when I saw her again, later than either of us usually lingered in the neighborhood. I'd gone out for air after studying too long, and she was sitting on the bench near the corner store, thermos balanced against her knee. Street light above her flickered, buzzing. I almost kept walking. But then she looked up, caught me. Her face was softer than usual, like the night had stripped something away. "You're out late," she said. "So are you." She shifted, patted the empty space beside her. I sat, too careful, keeping just enough distance. For a while, we just listened, to cars passing, to the hum of the light. She took a slow sip, then asked, "Don't you have friends your age? People you'd rather be with?" I let out a quiet laugh. "Maybe. But none of them are here." That seemed to land heavier than I meant. Her gaze stayed on the street. The muscles in her jaw worked once, then stilled. "I shouldn't." She started, then stopped. Fingers tightened on the thermos. "This isn't fair to you." I turned toward her. "Why not?" Her shoulders lifted, dropped. "Because you don't know me." "Not really. You see pieces, maybe. But the rest." She cut herself off, shook her head. "You'd be disappointed." I wanted to argue. To tell her that the pieces I'd seen, the small smiles, the careful questions, the way she tapped her thumb against the thermos when she was restless, already felt like more than I'd had with anyone else. Instead, I said, "I notice you. Isn't that something?" The words hung there, fragile, almost breaking the air. She finally looked at me, and her eyes gave her away, fear, maybe guilt, tangled with something she didn't want to name. "You shouldn't," she whispered. "I'm not meant to be noticed like that. Not by you." The silence that followed was raw, almost unbearable. My chest tightened with something close to anger, not at her, but at the invisible wall she kept raising. "Then tell me to stop," I said quietly. "Tell me you don't want this." Her breath caught. She opened her mouth, closed it again. Her hand lifted halfway, as if to touch me, then fell back to her lap. "I can't," she admitted. Just that. And it was enough to unravel me. I leaned forward, instinct pulling me closer than I should have been. She didn't move away. Her eyes flicked down, then up, then held mine with a force that burned. If the streetlight hadn't buzzed louder, if a car hadn't passed just then, we might have crossed that invisible line. But the moment held, trembling, unfinished. She exhaled shakily, the sound almost breaking. "What are we doing?" And she left it there, an open question neither of us dared answer. After that night on the bench, I expected something would shift. That maybe we'd find ourselves circling closer, no matter how much we pretended otherwise. But instead, she disappeared. Not vanished entirely. Her door still closed softly upstairs, her footsteps still padded faintly on the stairwell. But from me, she was gone. No coffee shop. No laundromat. No casual overlap. At first I told myself it was coincidence. Schedules changing. Life happening. But after the fourth day of empty rooms and quiet hallways, I felt it, deliberate. I caught a glimpse of her once, across the street. She was walking with another woman, laughing, hair caught in the wind. For a second she looked freer, lighter. And I wondered if that's who she was when I wasn't around, someone less careful, less guarded. Someone I wasn't meant to see. The whiplash was sharp. My phone stayed in my hand too often, thumb hovering over the screen. Her number was there now. I'd saved it quietly, even though she never gave me permission. I typed and erased too many drafts. You okay? Did I do something? Deleted all of it. One night, half asleep at my desk, my phone buzzed. A photo. Not of me, not meant for me. A little boy, 7, maybe 8, grinning with a gap-toothed smile, holding a paper crown on his head. And under it, just the caption, "Look how grown he is." My stomach flipped. Wrong number. Her son. Married, she'd said. A life somewhere else. She must have sent it without thinking. I didn't reply. Just stared at the screen until it dimmed out, leaving me with my reflection. The next day, I lingered by her floor. Heard voices inside, low, unfamiliar. A man's voice, not sharp, not hostile, but comfortable. The kind of comfort you don't fake. My hand almost lifted to knock, but I let it fall back to my side. I went back downstairs, sat at my kitchen table with the receipt from that first coffee still folded in my pocket. The apartment felt louder than usual, the fridge hum, the pipes groaning, even my own breathing. That night, I went to the coffee shop out of habit. The same table where she used to sit was empty, the chair pushed in neatly. I ordered anyway, stared at the chair too long, then packed up without touching my drink. On the walk home, I caught myself looking up at her lit window. A shadow moved across the glass, but I couldn't tell if it was her. I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt paused. Like life forgot to finish the sentence. I typed one last message on my phone. Do you want me to stop noticing you? But I never hit send. The screen glowed in my palm, waiting. Then it went dark. And so did the hall when I walked past her door. I hadn't seen her in almost 2 weeks when it finally happened. It was late evening, the hallway dim, the kind of hour where every sound echoed too much. I was carrying trash to the chute when her door opened. She stepped out, holding a bag of recycling. We froze, both of us. Her eyes flicked down the hall, as if searching for a quick escape, then back to me. I almost turned away, but something in her face stopped me. Tired, yes, but also waiting. You've been gone, I said before I could stop myself. She sighed softly. Not gone. Just trying to think. She set the recycling down at her feet, hands pressing against the fabric of her sweater. I didn't mean to disappear. I shifted, trash bag crinkling in my grip. Felt like you did. The silence pressed in, heavier than the air. She leaned back against the wall, shoulders drawn in. This isn't simple. You know that. I know. My voice caught. But I keep thinking, maybe simple doesn't matter. Her mouth curved, not into a smile but something smaller, sadder. You're too young to think that way. Maybe, I admitted. Or maybe I just know what I feel. Her hand rose, almost like she was brushing something from her hair, but it lingered in the air before dropping. You make it sound easy. But it isn't. You don't see the weight I carry. The years. The history. The mistakes. I swallowed, throat tight. Maybe I don't need to see all of it. Maybe I just see you. That stopped her. She looked at me like she wanted to believe it, but didn't know if she was allowed to. The hall went quiet except for the low hum of a light overhead. I set my trash bag down without thinking, closing the space between us just slightly. Not enough to touch, but enough that the warmth of her presence felt real. If you want me to walk away, just say it, I whispered. And I will. Her eyes searched mine, like she was measuring the cost of every possible answer. Then she exhaled, shaking her head. I don't want that. The words came so quietly I almost missed them. For a long moment, neither of us moved. My chest felt like it might break open just from holding still. Then, finally, she reached out and touched my sleeve, barely there, fingertips brushing the fabric like she was testing if I was real. I didn't move, afraid the spell would break. Her hand lingered, then pulled back slowly. She looked at me, almost a question in her eyes. Okay? She asked, voice low. I nodded, unable to say more. It was the smallest word, the simplest connection. But it was enough to change everything. Life didn't change all at once. It never does. Days still moved in their quiet rhythm, stairwell creaks, laundry cycles, the hiss of the coffee machine at 8:47 a.m. The difference was, now, she was there. Not every day, not in some dramatic sweep, but enough. Sometimes it was as simple as her knocking on my door with a thermos in hand, saying, I made too much tea. Other times, I'd leave my coffee unfinished on purpose, knowing she'd be sitting 2 tables down at the shop, tilting her head when she noticed. We didn't talk about what this was. Not directly. But the pauses had softened. The silences weren't heavy anymore, they were places to rest. On Thursdays, when I came back from class, she'd sometimes be waiting on the bench near the corner store, the same one where everything nearly broke open. I'd sit beside her, grocery bag between us, and she'd nudge it away so there was room for my hand if I wanted to rest it on the wood. Some days I did. One afternoon, rain pressing against the windows, she told me about her divorce. How the silence in her apartment used to feel unbearable until it didn't. How she'd built routines to keep the loneliness contained. I thought I was done with being noticed, she said softly, staring at her thermos. It felt safer that way. I didn't answer. Just folded a napkin between my hands, the way I always did when words felt too big. She noticed, of course. She always noticed. In turn, I admitted things I'd never told anyone. About the unsent texts. The way I'd linger in places just to feel like I mattered in them. How sometimes I'd scroll through my phone at night, looking for a reason to reach out, and always stopping myself. You matter, she said simply, almost sternly. Like she needed me to believe it. It wasn't love in the way movies told it. There was no single moment, no fireworks. Just the steady layering of time, shared tea, folded napkins, the sound of footsteps on the stairwell that no longer felt like interruptions. One morning, weeks later, I came into the coffee shop and the barista had already set down my black coffee before I ordered. I turned, and she was there, holding her thermos. She gave me that quiet half-smile and murmured, Predictable. I laughed, shaking my head. Guess some things don't change. Maybe that's good, she said. And for the first time, she let her hand brush mine across the table, no hesitation. I didn't pull away. Looking back, I can't point to a single day when we crossed from noticing to belonging. But we did. Life wasn't louder or brighter. Just steadier. Warmer. And sometimes, when we sat on that old bench in the fading light, I'd think, this is what it means to finish the sentence.